możemy już oddać głos panu profesorowi. Teraz możemy.
Seminar's title was Enacting Shakespeare, and it was to teach, well, more than teach, it was to experience Shakespeare in performance. If Shakespeare isn't fun, forget it. It's got to be fun. If it's fun for your students, they'll love it. If it's drudgery, if it's, you know, reading and translating and all that, they'll go, they won't like it. But get them on their feet. I'll talk more about that in a moment. Have them act, have them enjoy Shakespeare, have them enjoy and have fun with Shakespeare, and you've got them hooked for life. The thing about Shakespeare is he never lets you down. The plays are as vibrant 50 years later as when you first read them. Even more vibrant the more you bring to it. My philosophy is if you learn something and have fun learning it, it'll stick and it'll be enjoyable and you'll keep learning. If learning is a drudgery, if it's a bore, it won't last. It won't be important in your life. So I try to make my courses as much fun as possible, but still make the students learn something. And I think the two are not incompatible. I think one reinforces the other, the enjoyment and the learning. And I found after a couple of years doing this that there was no methodology about how to approach a Shakespearean play on the stage or on film or in video. There was nothing laid out for teachers who wanted to teach Shakespeare, or for anybody who wanted to just get as much out of a performance as they could. And that's what led me to writing this book, this little book. And if you look at the table of contents, you'll notice that after the prologue, the chapters all begin with finding the text, finding the set design, finding the characters. In other words, it's a method of explaining what to look for when you go to a Shakespeare performance. And if you know what you're looking for, then you'll find it. If you don't know what you're looking for, you won't know what you found after you've got it. You won't know what it is. That Shakespeare is one of the greatest poets, probably the greatest poet who ever lived, greatest dramatic poet. So it does reward us to study, to read his plays. There's a lot more we can get out of his plays by studying them on the page. In the theater, we'll miss a lot, but we also get a lot. And we get things in the theater that you can't get off the page. The action, the movement, the intonation, for example, of the voice. The facial expressions. You all know that a theatrical experience is so different from a reading experience. It's in some ways much fuller, just as reading it in other ways can be fuller. You can trace the imagery more carefully on the page than you can listening to it on the stage. But the action on the stage is much more gripping, unless you're adept at developing what one scholar has called the theater of the mind, the theater of the imagination. Costumes, sound effects, scenery, that was all optional. The only part was memorize the words, 20 minutes long, and an audience of at least one. And then something wonderful happened. They discovered this was fun. They also discovered that there wasn't just one way of acting a scene. There were many ways of acting the scene. But when it came time to perform before the audience, me, they had to make choices. As indeed any acting group has to make choices. So some liberties may be taken with the text. Some things may be cut. Some things may actually be added or reinterpreted from what Shakespeare may have understood. So one of the first things we do, I think, in approaching Shakespeare performance is to find out what is the text, what is the script, to use theatrical term. What is the script of the play? And what changes have been made? And why have they been made? the important thing in Shakespeare, as in all literature, I think, is not to be literal-minded. The example I'd like to use to impress this on students comes from Shakespeare's contemporary Edmund Spenser, The Faerie Queen. I don't know if you know that. Henslow approached Shakespeare in Archie and Hannibal and said, "Shakespeare, I need a play. Now give us a play with a good rousing plot and not too much of your damn poetry." That's what he wanted. A good rousing plot and not too much poetry. Thank you very much. Of course, today we love Shakespeare's poetry. And if you go to the theater, you won't find the first quarto version of Romeo and Juliet. You'll find Juliet's long speech there, because we just love that long speech. The poetry in it is just terrific.